Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. We're getting John, Dave and myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's great victory in the B&I Cup and look forward to the Pro 12 final against Glasgow and discuss that minor competition that was over in Cardiff at the weekend. Anyway, lads, so 44-17 against Leeds. Good old win for back-to-back B&Is.
Yeah, it was a great performance. It was a great win. The performance was good in every single area, really.
Pretty much, yeah.
Young players that we've had big hopes about performed. There was even kind of the whole guy sprung from the bench, comes close to man of the match type thing. It was in Roy Maloney. Yeah, I thought he was superb. It was a great performance in every area. A great reward for guys who played well all season, both for the A team and in kind of, if you like, Leinster Light, like Noel Reid and guys like that. But guys from the A team like Colin Marsh, I thought the halfbacks were outstanding. The halfbacks for
absolutely brilliant.
Were absolutely class.
Yeah, I was so impressed with Luke McGrath, obviously, because he not only did he do really well, but he looked good doing it. He did the flashy stuff, but he also
He's
did
looking good though, isn't he?
Oh, he looks great. Yeah, we've been banging his drum, I think, for the last year or so, and remember he was Joe Schmidt put him into the last league game of the season against the Ospreys, and he started it, I think, and he was really, really good in that. And ever since I've had my eye on him. Cathal Marsh, though, who started, I think I remember seeing him in his first training, said that one of those public training sessions for Leinster, and he just looked unfit and small, and I was going, who is that guy? Within, it's probably 18 months, maybe a little 20 months, something like that ago, and he looks really assured and really like his kicking is outstanding.
He got 5 conversions and 3 penalties as well.
And the ball fell off the tee twice on a touchline conversion, and I think it was on his wrong side as well, and he banged it over. Like he's outstanding, and he did some lovely little few jinks for one of the tries.
He ran the back line very well. His passing was good. His kicking from the hand was very good.
He's the full package, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, I know Leeds where, I mean, obviously you have to take into
home early,
and you have to take into consideration the previous week and the disappointment and so on and everything like that.
Yeah.
But wasn't it great to see Leinster actually running the ball and being creative in the back line?
Well, there is an element of, I mean, for Leeds it was after the Lord Mayor's show. I mean, their season, in terms of their actual goals for the season, would have ended the week previously.
Yeah.
But the one thing that struck out to me was, I mean, that was a big Leeds team, physically very big. They're managed by James Lowes, who, if anyone remembers, Bradford Bulls in the late 90s, early 90s, that great Bradford Bulls rugby league team. James Lowes was the hooker and one of their best players. And he's kind of built that team in kind of a rugby league image. They're very physically imposing. But I've often said this, I mean, you can make a small guy bigger, but you can't make a guy into a better footballer if he doesn't have those skills.
Of course.
And that's what Irish age grade teams have often come up against problems with bigger sides. But, they've got through because they're better footballers, or they've hung in because they're better footballers. And you could see that the Leinster players were just better footballers than the Leeds players.
In fairness, if you have a look through that Leinster pack, they're all big brutes. Like, I mean, okay, there was nobody over 6'5", but every one of those guys, I mean, look at them. Conan, he's huge. Leo Auva at number 8 is massive. Dominic Ryan, like that's a South African back row. It's so big. The 2 guys that started are pretty big in the second row as well. Quinn Rue is a real heavy hitter, and Ben Marshall as well. Unfortunately, Marshall only made 7 minutes, and I think the 2 of them clashed heads, did they?
Yeah.
But and he had to go off, and fair play to Rue playing on as well.
Yeah, he took a bit of a nap as well.
Didn't he? Yeah. And then, as you say, your man Maloney came on and. Jeez, he did everything. He did everything right, didn't he? And he can't have been expecting to come on for more than half an hour, really, can he? But even in the front row, I mean, Jack O'Connell is a huge bloke. Your man, the Tracy isn't particularly small either, and as we know, Tyke Furlong is a beast of a man as well. So yes, they were big. Their backs were probably
that was more what I was. That was more what I was saying.
Looked like a prop.
Fullback looked like a prop.
I watched
looked
him.
Like he was eating for 2.
I watched him in the playoff. I said it to you before the match. Keep an eye on the fullback, the size of him. I watched him.
Your chips, was he?
I watched him in the playoff games. I couldn't believe the size of the fellow when he was running out. But he's actually a very good player. He didn't get much of an opportunity to show it due to the way we played and other factors or whatever they might be. But they were a physically large side, but you know we got guys who are just great footballers, and you know a bit of brains will always beat a bit of brawn. You know.
Yeah.
But I thought our defence was really, really good,
Defence was
and
outstanding,
it was just like a blanket on them. Like
Yeah.
they and as you said, like they were a bigger team, and they tried to run through us and they couldn't, and that's demoralising to any pack of forwards that you have. That when you're constantly knocked back at the gain line,
And when you get the ball and you've no space,
Well, that was
what am I going to do with it? Like, you know,
they were constantly being swarmed. Like there were a number of situations in the game where they got the ball out wide, and the winger was faced with 3 and 4 guys who just drifted across because, you know, the way our defence was set up, they hadn't managed to make the breakthrough, and then when they slung it wide, they hadn't committed any of our players either. And it was as you say, a blanket defence. They got a couple of cheap tries late on, but the game was well over by then. And Mackin just put the tin hat in it.
yeah, it was an interception try just at the end. Yeah, it was.
which you have to take your hat off to Dempsey and to Fogarty for drilling their team, especially because they don't work with them on a daily basis as such. You know that they kind of it's almost a scratch side playing 12 or so games a season. Whereas I think Leeds had played 30 odd games this year.
I was about to say, when you look at the season that they both had, you know, it's the old one where you say, well, Leeds were match hardened and they were battle scarred and they were, you know, they were in a good place, whereas Leinster were laying around half the season. But the other side of it is Leinster A were well rested.
But
having
Leinster A are playing, but they might be playing for Lansdowne or Old Belvoir.
And the other side of that is
Which
when
aren't of the intensity
when Leinster A are training, you know, at least towards the tail end of every single week, they're training against Leinster.
Yeah.
You know, they're repping opposition, which, by the way, is a great way of learning different ways of playing the game because you have to try and copy how other teams play. But I mean, are you really going to be scared at, you know, David Doherty coming at you when you've had Brian O'Driscoll coming at you for the last 12 months? You know, it makes a big difference. You know, that ability. And Gervin Dempsey, he was interviewed before the match, indeed, and he was saying this is the first time he's had a really good kind of long run with the team. And not only that, he's had the senior team
doing the
repping. So it gave the younger guys great confidence and great, you know, made them feel, you know, that they were representing the province.
Yeah, but like that semi-final that they played against Ponty must really have stood to them as well, playing in front of whatever 5,000 or 6,000 in a high intensity.
There you go. Carl Marsh had to land a not too easy. I don't remember exactly where it was from, but he had a 5,000 Welsh blokes screaming at him while he was taking that conversion, and he put it over, you know, to tie the game up.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the kind of stuff that, like last year when they went away and beat Newcastle. In fact, I think all their games were away. They went down to Duradoyle, beat Munster. They went over to who was it? Bristol, I think they played last year in one of the knockout games. It was the quarter, I think.
Ealing Trailfinders?
No, that was in the pool this year.
Yeah, that was in the pool.
Yeah, it was last year. They had Bristol in the quarters, Munster and Duradoyle in the semis, and Newcastle away. And so they were away for all of their games, and they won the bloody cup. You know, you can't argue with that.
But like it's kind of like, you know, the Pro 12 is kind of the building block for guys going into Heineken or Ireland. And this is a building block for the kids coming up into and
good competition,
to get that great intensity and to get the lads used to playing for Leinster.
Well, that's always traditionally one of the great complaints, if you like, about the structure of the season is as players got moved through the levels, the gaps between the levels are too great.
Yeah.
The gap between AIL and Pro 12 was too great. The gap between Pro 12 and Heineken Cup, the gap between Heineken Cup and International Rugby. But what you've seen is with all these different competitions and the amount of experience players are getting now, those gaps are being contracted because the BNI provides a nice step. The standard has risen in the AIL because the young players are playing in it. The Pro 12 and the Heineken Cup are preparing players for international. I mean, we were talking like, you know, you got a year ago we were wondering like the Irish squad was very narrow. And like now you look at the Irish squad and there's, you know, maybe it's doubled in size.
And the 6 of that team are going on tour with Emerging Ireland. There's 8 Leinster in total, but there's 6 from that BNI Cup winning team that are going, which is, you know, it's recognition for a good season that they've had.
Yeah.
But isn't it a very interesting competition generally in the fact that you've got the semi-pro sides in Wales, you've got the fully pro but fairly lowish standard of the championship, and when I say low I mean compared to the Premiership, the Rabo, all that, and then you've got our A sides, which it's an interesting clash because our A sides, say compared to a Welsh club team, are much younger, much fitter, but much less experienced.
Yeah.
So you see that clash of the wily old prop and the young lads who are out to make their name. The Scottish put in some weird thrown together teams. Don't they? They're not exactly provincial academies or club academies. They're specially constructed sides, I think, to give players a bit of a chance. And again, it slots in our country just ahead of the AIL, which it's perfect stepping stone between AIL and Pro 12. So it's a nice kind of linear curve all the way up to international rugby.
But once again, like, it's Leinster that are dominating it. 2 seasons ago we got to the semi, beaten by Munster in extra time. Last season won it, this season won it. Again, it's a little bit of becoming the haves and the have-nots in this competition.
Well, I think to a certain extent what shows actually how good the level is, and not a matter of haves and have-nots, is the number of times that there have been extra time games and games going right down to the wire. That shows that what they've done, whoever the organisers of it, have actually pitched the level of the competition spot on.
Yeah.
If games are that close, if you've got like you were saying, fully professional Leinster A side, but they're young, they're not as experienced, against a semi-professional but very experienced Pontypridd team, and that game goes all the way to the wire, it goes to count back. Then last season, excuse me, again the Leinster A side against Newcastle, and that went to extra time. So it shows that they've actually pitched the level of the competition.
And the previous season, the semi went to extra time against Munster.
So the pitch of the competition is actually spot on in terms of, it has provided a good level playing field for everyone involved. Everybody gets a win out of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, anyway, with 5 good tries, why don't we have a quick go at those?
Yeah, buddy.
I thought that my pick was Luke McGrath's, but we'll have a look at that later.
This one, I thought this one was pretty good, actually.
It wasn't a bad try in there, was there?
There were very few poor tries in it, in fact.
There's something actually that I don't know if you may not have noticed, that I don't think you were in the stand where we were, but Mike Ross, you see where we were getting hurled in the scrum early on? Mike Ross walked down out of the stand, leaned over to one of the coaches and had a little conversation with him. 2 scrums later, we started mullering them.
Really?
He spotted, what I think he spotted was the loose head was boring in hugely. And he obviously had some word sent on to Tig Furlong. Tig, do this. Next thing you know, we're murdering him in the scrum. It was a huge turnaround.
The thing I liked about this try, apart from the break,
anyway,
was
sorry, I'm after spoiling that try.
the two, if you like, passes in midfield were from the 2 locks, and they were good passes. So it shows that they're comfortable with the ball in their hands as well. I mean, there were very nice passes from Roy Maloney and from Quinn
Rue, Sam Coughlin-Murray got the ball a little bit early, I think, just at the end there. The
Possibly,
pass was a fraction early, and he had a bit to do that. He, should have been a walk in.
You could be critical and say that maybe Hudson should have was it Hudson? I think it was. Hudson should have committed his man a bit better. Yeah. But Coughlin-Murray, you can actually see him take off, and he actually had the pace.
Has a bit of speed, doesn't he? He ran a lovely line for his other try, actually. We'll see that in the mirror.
Well, this is my favourite try, and I think this is...
It's a beaut.
But it's not just that, it's just, I think this is earmarking this kid out for a long career in blue.
He bounces off, I think it's their 7 there, is it?
6.
Is there 6? Is it? I knew it was a flanker.
It's a classic scrum half try, isn't it? I mean, it's how many times have you seen the world's scrum halves score that try?
But he bounced your man quite handily with a handoff there, and which it's obviously timing is the timing of the handoff, the timing of the run. See it here. Boom. Man just fell off. And
well, it's not so much that, it was that the guy wasn't really set up to. He was working under the belief that McGrath was going to pop it back inside to the 2 pops coming who were inside him. And he was set up for that tackle, and then by the time he readjusted, McGrath, he was off balance. McGrath was able to shift him pretty quickly.
And you
that's
got
what
him
I'm
coming.
It's timing. It's
Oh yeah.
And his acceleration through that hole.
Yeah.
I'd say that wouldn't, if they have a video analysis session, I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of it for that try though.
I'd say they'll probably just go home to bed after that one. That'd be
off on their hollybobs. If they haven't been called up into the England squad, seeing as everybody else seems to have been.
This is a lovely try as well.
Yeah, it was a very nice try.
I think Marsh has a hand in it early on, doesn't he? No, I'm thinking of a different one. Look at the line he ran outside your man, though. That's a real kind of O'Driscoll line. Got that outside
in.
break where he just curves on a little arc around the player, and the guy just can't get a hand on him. It looks impossible, but it's literally the line. It's the arc of the line that he runs just enough outside him.
He reminds me a lot of Shane Williams. He has that pace, quick feet, intelligence to get and just to make those kind of runs. I mean, how many times have
Nice
you seen
little
Shane
inside
Williams?
pass from McGrath.
Yeah.
Now, okay, he wasn't against a speedster, but he just ran just far enough outside your man to bury him.
I think they've given up at this stage.
Yeah.
Like there was some poor tackling, really.
That was Marsh there, was it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
a little step on him. That's the one I was thinking of. There's a bit of fumble.
took his opportunity well though.
Yeah, he certainly did.
I mean, they weren't exactly killing themselves to make the tackle, but that's not his problem.
No.
Carl Marsh completely made that try. I mean, he made the initial break, but he did a lovely little step as well and a dummy, and he showed the whole range of skills there just before he passed the ball. It is here.
Yeah. Well,
stepped outside your man.
He's not here to make the point, so Tony Ward, ball in two hands.
Yeah. And he stepped the other guy as well. Was that Quinn Rue? It got a little bit sketchy there, but Fanning did what he had to do. Admittedly, there was a bit of comedy tackling there at the end, but hey, you play what's in front of you.
Icing on the cake, I suppose.
I mean, because they were coming on strong, they weren't good at they weren't having a chance of winning, but they were trying to put a bit of respectability on things. So they were beginning
killed them completely.
Yeah, they were beginning to sling the ball around a bit.
We're just hitting them, crunching them on the gain line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a loopy pass, but
now, in fairness, he should have seen him there, really, shouldn't he? But it does look remarkably like
oh, it does, yeah.
another try I'm thinking of.
A few more people at that game, though, wasn't there?
Show good gas actually, because you're always 9 times out of 10 if you've got enough pace to go 80, you're always going to be able to burn off a winger that might be quicker than you over 20, and that's what he did. He burnt the winger off.
Their 11 looked fairly handy actually, didn't he?
You look at here.
He was one of the Dohertys.
You might be able to see it in the he's coming across on the 14 is coming across on the angle, but he just doesn't have. Wingers don't need 80-metre pace; they just need 20-metre pace. Yeah.
He gave up.
14 is trotting.
Yeah. He made a good sprint initially, but Mackin was able to keep his pace up.
Yeah. So that was
good to see, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so that's obviously we've retained that title. One of the titles I suppose that we had to give up this season was the Heineken Cup.
And the Amlin.
Well, and the Amlin, of course. But those two finals were on at the weekend. I'm glad Toulon beat Sarries. I suppose just purely and simply because we were beaten by Toulon, and I think it's always better to be beaten by the winners eventually.
Yeah.
And they were nice to us when we were over there, in fairness.
Yeah. There's two
Well,
good
it
reasons.
opened my eyes to. I said it before. I thought they were a team of mercenaries and a bit like Saracens, perhaps, but totally different.
Yeah, the obsession that town has with rugby it has to be seen to be believed. So,
yeah.
I know. It was fitting that the only team that actually played any rugby during the final won the final. The 2 tries were lovely tries, both in construction and execution. And it's good to see good players like Matt Gateau and of course Johnny Wilkinson and Joanne Smith and stuff come away with, and Fernandez Lava come away with a medal in their pocket, another medal in their pockets, because it's much better to see them do it than that Saracens crowd.
Well, people are on a big negative on Saracens. I kind of feel sorry for them at this stage because everybody bloody hates them. Even their own fans. Apparently there was a big thing with a coach getting lost.
The official club coaches were supposed to, they were sold to the supporters as been leaving at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. They didn't leave till 11.
Yeah. With
the result that most of the coaches didn't get most of the supporters didn't get into the ground until 20 minutes after kickoff.
Yeah.
But it's indicative, I think, of how the Saracens organisation treats supporters and the game in general.
Supporters do seem to be an afterthought to the organisation. But anyway, I feel bad for their supporters.
I would to a certain extent, but they've done nothing about it. I mean, they're quite happy to be fucked up the ass, so I don't care if they have distended rectums.
Okay.
Harsh and not even that fair, Dave. Anyway.
But anyway, swinging back to a tournament that we did win last season, the Pro 12 finals obviously on this weekend against Glasgow. Our third meeting of them with the season, which we've won one, they've won one, so you know,
they've won a dour sludge fest in bad conditions in the winter, and we won a spring game with a little bit more oomph to it. I think there was a lot more tries. I think it was 25, 28.
Yeah, that's right.
So you know we go in with all the statistics. We're playing in the RDS. They've won there once.
In 19 appearances.
19 appearances.
Well, not in the RDS, but in Dublin.
Well, they've won in Dublin once in 19 appearances. Never mind the RDS. I think they were 11.
They won once in Dublin.
Yeah.
Back in September 11, which obviously the World Cup was on.
Cup, yeah.
But I'm sure they were missing players too. But teams weren't really.
Yeah. So you know, everybody reckons it's going to be a tight game. It's going to be, you know, a big slogfest like the last two semi-finals have been. I just have a sneaking feeling that somebody's going to do something different in it. They'll get the Fijians throwing the ball around. They'll get, you know, there's something that's going to happen in that game that's just going to, because of the familiarity, both sides are going to want to do something that the other side isn't expecting. Because, let's face it, if they're going to butt heads for the whole 80 minutes, A, it's not going to be the greatest spectacle in the world, and B, you know, are either side going to pull away?
I don't think either team can be confident of victory by going into the game with a game plan based around, as you say, butting heads.
Yeah.
Because both teams will feel the other team are pretty good at that too. So I don't think it gives either team an advantage in it as such. The statistics are interesting, and if you were to go purely on statistics, you wouldn't think Glasgow had much of a chance. But the thing about, you know, Glasgow are the form team in the league. They're the form.
Absolutely.
Not only that, their players are the form players in the league. They're a team that has slowly but steadily been rising up the charts, as it were.
That was their last defeat, actually. It was in Dublin.
But not just this season, but over the last, we'll say, 3 years, they've been kind of building and building and building. People thought that the removal of Lineen was a bit of a crazy thing, and bringing in Townsend was a bit jobs for the boys, but he's taken them on again.
Townsend was seen as they were throwing their hands up in the air when Townsend was appointed, and he's proved them all wrong, really, isn't he?
He took them to the next level.
But someone in that club is doing something right.
But whilst, as I say, the bare statistics would give them limited chance. The fact is, as their progression, to move to the next step of their progression, the same as we had to move to the next step of our progression, that's when you break the lie of the statistics. Sorry, Jay.
No, I was just saying that, like, somebody in the club is doing something right. Whether it's the CEO or whoever he is, picking Townsend into that team, he's brought them to another level now. Like, getting into the final, there's huge excitement over in Glasgow. I think what I read was 2,500-3,000 people coming over. I mean, that's an enormous crowd, considering that when they used to play in Hewenden, they got 800 at their matches.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a great buzz. And it was interesting to think that, like, the two Edinburgh soccer teams have been relegated. Glasgow, obviously, Glasgow Rangers are in whatever league they are in outside the Scottish Premier League. There's an opportunity in Scotland for people to get behind a
pro sports team.
A pro sports team. Especially in Edinburgh, have gone about it completely the wrong way, but something has been done very right in Glasgow.
Well, the move to Scottstown, I think, is the key move. I think it's one of the most important things. I mean, getting the players right and all that is yes, but you've got to get momentum behind the club.
Got that.
And they've got that by moving to, for want of a better phrase, their own ground. That's the right size for them, with their own branding on the side of the wall, with their own pictures in the tunnel as they come out. All that, those small touches that make it feel like home. Their supporters now can build a kind of a base on season tickets and guide, like the way we all met. We all stand in the same place in the terrace week in, week out, and you build a kind of a community. And that's what they've done. They've built a community around Warriors.
Yeah, and they've kind of, even just by reading their website, like, they are kind of, very conscious of the fact that there's not too many people have been season ticket holders for the last 5 years. So everyone is fairly new to the whole concept of going to a rugby match every second weekend. And as a result, they're very open to, well, come along and join us and have a go and see what it's like, which is great to see. It does really remind me of Leinster 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it reminds me of. And the thing that they might have that maybe Leinster 10 years ago didn't have is they actually have a team that I think is
dressing rooms.
Yeah, well, dressing rooms and changing rooms. They actually have a team that's ready to win. I don't think Leinster was 10 years ago. I don't think it was. It wasn't really set up for. There was no great depth of character there to a certain extent.
In the back.
Well, we'd say within the entire organisation. Now that developed, but I think Glasgow have that now, so they're ready to move to the next level. Hopefully, we can stop them. We can postpone it for a year. From a Leinster point of view, because we don't want this to be a kind of a Glasgow hagiography before the match even starts.
No,
we've bigged them up, but do they have the big game temperament? I mean, if you look back at, say, their Heineken Cup season, it was a disaster. They won 2 of their 6 games. The only 2 matches they won were Exeter. They lost against Cardiff, both matches, home and away. And they had Toulon in their group, which is excusable.
Well, I think they can down in Toulon. They got an absolute stonking in the first half, but really came back strong in the second half. And Toulon actually had to work for the second half, which I don't think they expected to. So there is that. It's hard to know if they have big game temperament because this is their first big game.
That's well, no, they've had a couple of semi-finals which they missed out on over the last few years. Now they got a home semi-final, which was the first time that they'd done that, and they had Munster, which might have been on a bit of a downer after
the right team at the right time.
Well, they were on a downer after the Toulon game.
And look how tight both semi-finals were, though.
Yeah,
in fairness, like Munster could have had a try there that they didn't get. They could have lost one that they did get.
The semi-final against us last year.
Yeah,
there was 2 points in that.
Yeah, and a missed kick from.
And 4 points the year before.
So
they missed a kick at the end. Yeah.
The question you can ask the question about their big game temperament, but it's one we really can't answer until we see them in a big game. I mean, to a certain extent, there's comparisons to be made with Ulster, who made that same progression, even changed the coach to the surprise of many halfway through that progression, and got to finals, and then maybe you could question whether they had the temperament because they didn't play well in the finals they got to.
Yeah.
So that's the comparison with Glasgow. Do Glasgow have, that little bit extra to push it over?
But I think
because I know we have.
Oh yeah,
and that's the thing.
We
So
said
it's
it
been
here
proven.
last week.
Yeah.
But the difference I think between Ulster and Glasgow is that it's like Ulster is made up of a number of very, very large, big name players. Like there's Irish internationals, there's half them are Springbok internationals, All Black Europe World Cup winners, and so on. It just seems that the Glasgow team is a team made up of the sum of the parts is better than the individuals that are in it.
Hold on a minute.
And that can
they've
go
got
an awful
Lions
lot,
in there.
but that can go an awful lot for sport. That
I agree with
it's
you.
It's a team mentality rather than a bunch of
the whole is
individuals.
greater than some of the parts. I do agree with you. A Gestalt. 2 weeks running. But they have some. But the thing is, yes, that's true. But they also have some superb individuals. I mean, they have Stuart Hogg and Sean Maitland, who both went on Leinster. Now whether Hogg will be playing,
As did Ryan Grant.
we don't know. Ryan Grant. Maitland actually is in bang on form. He looked very dangerous in the last couple of weeks. Tommy Seymour's playing well.
They didn't play Hogg in the semi.
No, they didn't play him. That's what I'm saying. I'm wondering when
Big
they
rumours
play
he's going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They've obviously the Mercurial, Nico Matawalu, who seems to have taken over from Brendan Williams as the chief owner of the Verb Mercurial, as it applies to Pro 12 teams. He could beat us on his own. He could beat us on his own, or he could cost them the match.
Let's beat him first.
Yeah. They lost Strauss last week against Munster, and that would be considered a disastrous loss, losing because he's the man the pack rallies around.
With the second row.
Yeah, Nakawara came on and was absolutely brilliant. Really was. Played a game that maybe we didn't think he had because he had to be very orthodox a lot of the time. Now there was an awful lot of carrying the ball in one hand, but yeah. But to a certain extent, when you're playing in that position in that team, you do have to be orthodox a lot of the time, and he did it. He knuckled down and did the work, which allowed him to display his more extravagant skills.
Yeah, well, his extravagant skills could well be called upon. I'm very happy with our defence, though.
Yeah.
I think if it does come down to a battle of defences, it might even favour us.
Although it should be pointed out they have the best defence in the league.
Allegedly, yeah. But our defence are in good form. Their attack are in good form. It could be a bit of a cracker of a game. I'm hoping it's going to catch fire anyway. We could pick our team fairly easily. I think Sean O'Brien has gone from starting at 6 to being on the bench to, I'd say he's probably start at 7 with Ruddock and Heaslip. Jennings on the bench. Maybe you could put in Jordy Murphy or Dominic Ryan, or but I'd say that's what they'll go with for the experience. Rumour is McCarthy's fit, so him and Toner, with probably Leo Cullen on the bench for his last appearance. And then the props. Does it matter?
No.
Put
I think Marty Moore is
two of them
probably
in there.
nudging ahead of.
I think he is. I
Rossi
think
there.
he is in terms of form, but in terms of how Leinster work their props, using all four and all four being of the standard they are, I don't think it matters which two you start with.
Exactly. Like you can build a play, or you can build a game plan around having any two of them start and any two of them come on for any number of reasons. So we're apart from Strauss being injured, we're our front row. Like if he was there, we'd have two front rows that you could just. And Aaron Dundon isn't exactly rubbish. Let's face it.
Yeah.
He hasn't had because they've got two such good hookers. He hasn't had too much to do recently.
He's a player I like a lot.
But he's
actually,
a great player. Yeah.
You got to think Kirshner will come back into the back three with Dave Carney.
Dave Carney out and Luke Fitz probably not going to make it back.
I see Kirshner and McFadden and Rob Kearney in the back three.
Yeah, there's little doubt that's what it'll be, and it's just a matter of who's going to be 23. Might be Fanning. Might be, who knows? It could end up being Brendan Mackin. It could be,
I think he'll go with Brendan Mackin. I mean, he's been used on the wing a couple of times. He seems to be playing well. We saw him in the A match. He was in good form, and he does cover those. He covers, from 12 out.
What I'd like to see is Luke McGrath rewarded with a bench at least from that. I mean, he's not going to replace Redden in the starting team in the final, but he could easily replace Boss on the bench. I don't think it'd be a gamble at all. I'd love to see him get the reward for his play last week.
There's no certainty that Redden will start.
There's no certainty of anything, I suppose, but you would expect Redden to start.
If as you say, there's an element of pack against pack in the initial stages of the game, it might be he might decide to go with start Boss. You never. The only area I think where there's any query about selection is the halfbacks, and I don't even think there's that much. I mean, I thought Madigan played pretty well against Ulster, but not at out half.
Good game, but that's exactly it. And having the extravagance of being able to play Madigan at 22 means you can deploy him anywhere. Like we deployed him at 12 with Darcy at 13. You can deploy him at full back, or you can bring him on to replace Coppert. And that's such a. I mean, it's not great for Madigan because it means he's not getting a start, but it's such a great card to have when you've already got an outside back on the bench at 23 to have him as well. So I think that's where he's going to end up. It'll be Coppert and probably Redden, but maybe not. But
I can't see there'll be too many changes from the team that won the semi-final, though.
No, but any changes there will be would be purely tactical tweaks.
Yeah, McCarthy back and Dave Carney out for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and maybe O'Brien in.
And O'Brien to start instead of.
I'd say the four of them will be involved in terms of the back row, and then it's just a matter of which two are the starting flankers.
Yeah, it's again you can make an argument for Jennings starting and McGrath being or O'Brien being deployed, and you can make an argument for O'Brien start. I think that he's had a start and he's had a bench. And he's had 2 weeks off to get his fitness up, so I'd say it'll be better to start him because you'll see how much you get out of him, and you can tell him to go mental for an hour and bring on Shane Jennings to take us home, hopefully, rather than bringing him on and not knowing exactly how long you're going to get out of him or what, and it'll be the end of the season because he's not going to Argentina, so he's be wrapped in cotton wool the minute he walks off the pitch, whatever stage it's at, so. Hopefully it's enough to do the job.
Exactly. Well, anyway, we can't obviously not mention that it's the two lads, Leo and Drico, retiring.
Hey.
Are they? Yeah, I believe so. It's Leo's 218th, or will be 219th game if he starts.
And considering he's had 2 years in Leicester, that's pretty impressive.
50 odd games over there as well.
That'll be adding up to nearly 300 pro games.
He's had a great career. He's been a great servant for Leinster Rugby. The attitude,
still will be,
and still will be. The way he's been one of the key architects of the of the Leinster rugby attitude since he returned. Himself and Shane Jennings really did turn things around.
There's a very interesting article in I think the Sunday Independent with Shane Jennings, and he kind of was asked that question, and he said, yes, we did bring that attitude back in, but it wasn't just us.
Talked up, he said as well.
He said there was
make a lot of it.
But he said there was other lads, like, and he kind of name checked the Horgans and the Hickeys and Drico, obviously, and one or two others who also had that mindset, saying we're just so peed off losing all the time that we now have to step up to a higher level.
There would have been no good Jennings and Cullen coming back and with that attitude if there hadn't been fertile ground for those words to fall upon, you know, which there were. But you know, somebody always has to start the fire, as they say. So those two were the guys that did it, and Leo as captain. You could see his selflessness. In various different trophy presentations where he's taken the back step to allow other players to lift the trophies that he has, you know, worked so hard to win, which is, you know, just a great attitude, because that's the one, to a certain extent, it's the captain's one great moment at the end of the season is to lift the trophy, and he's always allowed somebody else to do it.
Yeah,
with him.
Yeah,
on one occasion.
And I just sort of my one of my great memories of him was against Claremont away when we were being pounded on the line in the last 5 minutes.
When he was being pounded on the line.
And he was being pounded. He was putting his face where people were afraid to put their foot, and he was getting battered and battered and battered, and he didn't care. He was stepping over, making it so awkward for them to have to turn all of their possession into that vital try.
Well, as we said last week, this is what the big experience thing about being in big games is about. You know how much pain you've got to take to win, and sometimes, you know, is it worth taking all this pain if we're going to lose? When we just take just that little bit more pain, and then we can win. So they know that mindset, and they know what it takes. Yeah. In terms of how FUCKED they're going to be when the final whistle goes. They're past masters of that. So we're just hoping that Glasgow are a year away from having that big match thing themselves. You know, maybe they'll do the Munster route and lose it a few times before they win it.
I mean, the other guy who's leaving obviously is O'Driscoll.
Before I go on to him, I just obviously Leo is going to move onto the coaching team. And John O'Gibbs, who's been there for the last 6 years, is also leaving. This is his last game for us. Yeah. He's been here for 6 years. In those 6 years, like, obviously we've won 3 Heineken Cups, been in everything. Five Pro 12 finals consecutively. Yeah. Only one of them, obviously, but and Amlin, I'm sure he's been involved in some way or other with the A team. They've won 2 BNI Cups. Like, he has transformed, or he's certainly helped transform what was considered a weakness within the club was our pack, and we couldn't, even though we had brilliant backs, couldn't get them the bloody ball. Yeah. And he has transformed a bunch of forwards into one of the dominant packs in European rugby.
Well, that's the exact point I was going to say. Now, obviously, Mike, in fairness, Mike Brewer started the process, but it was John O'Gibbs that took, you know, a pack that was not feared. Never mind not feared, it wasn't respected anywhere in Europe, and turned it into let's not beat around the bush. In 2012, the Leinster pack was the best pack in Europe, bar none. It was superb in every single aspect of the game, and that was what he created. That he created the attitude, he created
the low rucking style.
I mean, there are hundreds of things, but you know, what he will also have done, ironically enough, in his departure, is he will have shown Leo Cullen that you can actually make that transition. The only thing I'd worry about in terms of Leo, and it's something that I'm not in favour of, and I've said it before in relation to Anthony Foley and other guys, is, you know, are you prepared to break your friendships?
I think I wouldn't say he already has, but I think
you have to. He
already has that bit of aloofness is the wrong word, but distance, shall we say.
I think, like, if he's 34, 35, I think there's nearly a generation gap between some of the guys
36.
coming through.
Between some of them, yeah, but I mean,
maybe not him and he's.
There's a lot of guys in that pack that he spent 4 and 5 years, you know, in the trenches with. Yeah. And it's my only concern about this, because I have no concern about his ability. I have no concern about his ability to make the change from player to coach. None whatsoever. The only thing I'd have concern about is that, you know, at some point he's going to have to, you know, maybe end the career of a mate. Yeah. You know, and that's hard.
I think that he kind of has that steel in him anyway.
Well, I hope so.
That's the head coach's job, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he can always appear not to be the one doing it, but look, he's been given orders since he came back. So what's he going to be doing? He's going to be giving orders. He's got the respect in there. I mean, people would walk through.
Like I say, it's only
anyway,
a very small affair, but it is something that has to be mentioned in fairness. But yeah, I'd have no queries about his ongoing contribution to Leinster.
And then there's some other bloke as well retiring.
I'm surprised actually that we haven't had wall to wall. This is Brian O'Driscoll's last rugby match anywhere ever for the whole, because
I'd say over to you, get onto it.
I'm sure they will, but like
for their pre-match videos.
Well, he made his debut.
It's only a few days away.
He made his debut for Leinster against Munster in August 1999. That's over nearly 15 years ago.
Last millennium.
Yeah.
And he's played, I think, 180 odd games for Leinster. He's 133 Irish caps, 4 Lions tours. Like, what a great player that we've been so privileged
every week
to see every week. I mean, of all those matches, we've probably seen at least 3/4 of them in the flesh.
Well, that's it. I mean, you look at the world of sport, and you think of you know the Santos fans week in week out getting to see Pele, or Real Madrid fans getting to see Puskás, or Lakers fans getting to see Magic week in week out, or I don't know. You go through all the sports, and that's us. We've got to see the great of our sport week in, week out for the price of a season ticket. And the thing about O'Driscoll is you always get your value out of him, because, even if he's not playing well or it's a dull day, he'll always do something. Yeah. He'll always do something that'll make it worth your while going to watch him play.
But it's not
that nobody else can do.
But it's not that he's huge in Ireland or in Europe. He's truly a global name.
He's global, baby.
Like, I was down in South Africa for the Lions tour, and honest to God, the South Africans didn't know anyone on the Lions team except one man, Brian O'Driscoll. And that says it all. Like, that if a team, those South Africans, they don't throw around praise too easily, or
indeed at all.
And yet all they wanted to see, obviously, a Springbok victory, but they also wanted to see their great Brian O'Driscoll in the flesh.
And in fairness, he gave them value for money on that tour.
He did.
But I know. I mean, it's hard to put into words, because everybody said everything, and a lot of words have been used about them, and kind of because they've been used so often, to a certain extent, they've been cheapened. It's just very hard to put into words that we've just been very, very lucky that for the bulk of our rugby watching career, we've got to watch from a distance of no more than 50 feet, perhaps.
Well,
the greatest player that this country's ever produced.
I suppose the one phrase you could use is, you don't miss your water till your well runs dry. So it'll only be next season when we're going down to see, we don't have him in the team anymore.
In fairness, we've had 18 months to try and get used to it.
Yeah, but are you used to it yet? No.
Now the thing, but you see, the other side of that is, and I don't want to be dismissive, but the great thing about sport is there's always a new hero right around the corner. Yeah. The king is dead, long live the king.
Exactly.
And that's the great thing about sport. I mean, because it keeps the seasons ticking over, the years ticking over without. But it's going to have to be one hell of a hero to replace Brian O'Driscoll.
But like 11 years ago when Woody retired, that was everyone sort of nearly was saying, that's the end of an era. That's our greatest, one of our greatest ever rugby players gone. Who is going to replace him? And it'll happen to O'Driscoll. It'll happen to all the greats that are currently playing, whether it's Ronan O'Gara's gone, or Paul O'Connell, or Sean O'Brien, or any of these lads.
What'll happen is, both Leinster and Ireland will just play the game a bit differently, because their strength. Well, it's like when we had a huge season out of Rocky Elsom in 2009, and we were all going, "What the hell are we going to do next year? I mean, who could possibly replace him?" Well, as we had Sean O'Brien and Kevin McLaughlin stepping up, but
and Nathan Hines coming in.
Neither of them replaced him in the sense that they did his job.
Because we didn't try to.
Because they didn't try to, exactly. So we just had different emphasis. So now 13 won't be such a big weapon for us, certainly in the short term. But we'll have other strengths coming in different parts of the team, and we'll be doing stuff that both Leinster and Ireland. And I'm not saying we won't miss him. Because
of course we will.
It's pretty obvious we will, but the team will, both teams, Leinster and Ireland, will realign to some degree to take advantage of the players that are the top-notch players. And if somebody is filling in there for a season or two, then we'll see what develops.
All right, yeah. You see, the thing is, I mean, you look at it and you think. I mean, everybody thought his career was over in 2008. You know, nobody really expected him to come back so strong. But in 2009, he came back even stronger. I mean, to a certain extent, he's had kind of a 5-year second wind to his career. Nobody really expected him to come back after the injuries, and
nobody thought he'd trust his shoulder after 2005. Nobody, you know, will he ever be the same player again?
Because the guy has no respect for his body whatsoever. I mean, he's
ridiculous, really.
There's a scene in RTE did a kind of a final words on the 2009 Grand Slam, and one of the tries O'Driscoll scored, and it's Paul O'Connell and one of the other forwards are standing looking at it or sitting looking at it, kind of been replayed to them, and O'Connell's sitting there with his mouth open, that the audacity to go that low, that hard.
He actually
there.
said,
and he'd just been nearly knocked out on the by it was the scrum half in England, wasn't it?
No, yeah.
And it was within a minute of him being concussed on the touchline, you know.
And O'Connell actually said, he knew exactly what he was doing then. It wasn't just a spur of the moment thing. It was pre-rehearsed and planned in his own mind 2 or 3 moments beforehand that he was going to take the ball and go.
But the amount of times I've seen, like, when we're on that line and O'Driscoll just suddenly arrives at the back of the ruck.
Boom.
And and you can see him. He's looking. He's looked like a mongoose ready to strike.
A great example of that was in the final in Cardiff 3 years ago, and it was one of the sparks in the second half. A ball came at the back of a ruck, and he just went boom around the edge of it, made about 30 meters, and I think he set up the first drive.
Second strides, yeah. But that's. I mean, you look at the breadth of his career, and he started off obviously with huge pace and incredible step and great power because he built himself up. But then he reinvented himself. Trimmed back down again. Maybe the pace has started to fade, but the brain had got sharper. He obviously had eye surgery, so he could actually see what he was doing. His kicking game got a lot better. He started to create. You saw the try he created for Simon Zebo. That passed out from 3 guys against Wales
ridiculous,
last year. The pass for Shane Jennings against Ulster this year. His ability just to find that snip just to get the ball, and of course his performance. I think, you know, if one performance this season that'll be always remembered is the performance against Northampton over in Northampton. Yeah. Not just that, but his whole game. I remember when he played. Do you remember in what we call Bat 2 in January 2006? And again, that was another year that he was never going to come back from. If you like, the previous year, he was never going to come back. And we went over to Bath, and he was just majestic. He destroyed Bath that day. And the Bath, remember afterwards, the Bath fans were like, "Oh, I can't believe we got to see Brian O'Driscoll play like that," kind of thing. It was one of the.
There's been so many brilliant days.
Yeah,
like
but that's
that.
it. How many of those days has he given us?
When he chipped over, who was it? Staunton.
Jeremy Staunton, and then flicked it on again.
And kicked again out of his hands. He, very close to doing something illegal there, kicking it out of your man's hand. But hey, that happened right in one of many amazing moments that happened right in front of me. As mentioned today, when we were playing Agen and Rupeni Tau coming the bucket or whatever his name was, nearly caught him. If he hadn't had that last burger, he might have caught him. But Brian O'Driscoll puked his ring up. On the
he was
field
as sick as a dog. He had the flu.
You know, and he scored a hat trick. So
a lot of guys.
If he wasn't sick as a dog, maybe it would have been 6.
A lot of guys nearly caught O'Driscoll. Well, I always remember the story that I think it's Will Greenwood tells it about on the 2001 Lions tour, where they're having kind of boxercising. And Austin Healy is there giving it the big I am, and he's there, I'll take on anyone. And O'Driscoll says, I'll have a go. He pulls on the gloves, and Austin's giving it the alley shuffle and all this, and he swings a big haymaker at O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll just sways back and leads in with a punch and leaves Austin Healy on the ground, and did it 2 more times.
Yeah, well, there you go. He's got that athletic. He's got the brain and the hands and he's got it all. He's the full package, and we'll never see his like again.
Well, anyway, Dad, thanks a million for sharing some wonderful memories of Drico. And if you're going to the game on Saturday, enjoy Drico's
and buy us a
game.
pint.
Yeah.